Welcome, welcome, welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get into this week's episode of Last Week to Game. That doesn't sound right. I like Crowdfunding Countdown better. It's another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown where we take a look at every single board game campaign finishing up this week. That's right, every single one. Except, yo-ho, you only hang once. Because, honestly, I couldn't think of anything funny to say about it. And the title alone made me feel like hanging myself twice. Dang it, that's not bad. Put it back in. Put it back in. I mean, if they gave me any indication as to how to play their game on their campaign page, well then it might have been in this week. But it isn't, so here we are. Anyway, for those who are new, I like to look at games in the last week of their campaign because, quite frankly, there are a lot to keep track of. And for those of you who aren't new, who have been here before, well, I still like to look at things in the last week of their campaign. Because you also get to see if there are any additional stretch goals worth mentioning, or at least that make it worth it for the additional shipping that you're going to pay to get these Kickstarter exclusive stretch goals, instead of waiting for retail. I also have a mandate to focus on everything out there because just because I'm not particularly interested in one doesn't mean it may not strike a chord with some of you. And I usually end up regretting that decision. And this week, well, it's no exception as we turn to our first game, SSO, Starship Omega. And this is one where the concept sounds great. You're given a bunch of different missions, you're on this spaceship, you're trying to make sure you navigate the spaceship and survive what's thrown at you. You might have different objectives. Each turn you need to breathe, so if you run out of oxygen, well, then you're gonna die. Or maybe you just kill off that other crew member over there because they're the ones who breathe the heaviest anyway, and that means there's more oxygen left for the rest of us. This concept sounds really intriguing. It sounds like it's a card version of Nemesis, but when you actually look into it, it's closer to the Oregon Trail, which just fills me with disappointment. You're going to turn up a challenge card, hope that you and your crew can respond to it, rinse and repeat and repeat and repeat, until you're either dead or the deck is empty and you've managed to weather the storm of all these challenges and there will be no more challenges in space. You did them all. It's also an incredibly unclear campaign page, but it's doing very well. It's raised over $80,000 Canadian. And this is a reprint, and you can purchase additional challenge decks, which are supposed to vary up the experience because every game you're going to be going through the same challenge deck if you don't purchase these additional ones. Which again is a great concept. Hey, yeah, mix up the game. Give me these different challenges. That sounds cool. But as far as I can tell, it kind of just mixes up the number of morale you need to move the track up and down by. I just don't understand why it's doing so well. But I do have to say that it is an incredible point of entry in terms of budget consciousness. It's 19 bucks Canadian. They have it for 11 pounds. So if you think there's something there to that concept, if you check it out, warning, the campaign page isn't that clear. I had to really parse through it. That'll be a theme for a lot of these games this week. There aren't that many games, but a lot of them you really have to kind of crunch through if you want to read it for yourself. I feel like I have to be missing something to it. I don't think I am, but it feels that way. Anyway, 19 bucks Canadian if you want to take a gamble, see if it's right for you. I have been wrong exactly one time in my life before, so you know what? This could be the second. If you're interested, that's 2 days from now at Wednesday at 7:02 a.m. Now, thankfully, the next one is very easy to read through, very easy to get a sense, and one that I am excited about, and that is The Stuff of Legends, based on the ongoing graphic novel of the same game, whose video, which, and I assume this is a line from the comics, but it starts out saying something like, "The year is 1944. There's a war going on in Europe. But in this child's bedroom in Brooklyn, an even greater war is about to happen." I mean, you're setting yourself up for some pretty high stakes here, you know? As far as I can remember, World War II was pretty bad. And I'm not quite sure how oh no, I take it back. That is terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. Scarier than any war that has ever happened. So you're going to take on the role of one of the boy's toys, which is different than my girlfriend's boy toy, Alberto. They're just friends, okay? He helps her out when I'm out of town with the housework. And you are going to head into the dark to try and retrieve the boy from the clutches of the boogeyman and his army of forgotten toys. I mean, honestly, maybe the boy should have been better at playing with all of his toys instead of just focusing on Max the bear over here, and maybe he wouldn't be in this situation, you know? Kind of seems like it's the boy's fault. And if you were thinking that, well, then you just might happen to be loyal to the boogeyman instead of being loyal to the boy and are trying to sabotage all the other toys' chances at success. But just like Battlestar Galactica, a pretty much beloved game by anyone who is sensible, your allegiances can shift mid-game and you can find yourself working for the opposite team. Now, I love social deduction. Anything that gives me these sorts of opposing secret teams, I am liable to be interested in. And so basically the premise of this one is it's cooperative until it's not. And you have to lead your group of toys to the correct exit. And if you find the correct exit, one of 4 exits that exist on the map, and you bring everybody there, then you escape with the boy and you take him back to safety. If you, however, get to the wrong exit because somebody who was loyal to the boogeyman happened to lead you astray and convince you that this exit was the actual exit, well, the boogeyman keeps the boy in his clutches forever, and you failed your civic duty as a toy. There's also a really neat mechanic when you're out of cards and you need to draw a new one, you flip a coin. And if it's the boogeyman side, well, then he gets an extra super big power, which can lead towards you losing the game. But if it's the boy's side, well, then he moves one step closer to being lost completely, which inevitably makes you lose the game. A Sophie's choice, if you will. I've never seen it. Otherwise, the gameplay takes place, the group will get a collective 3 actions on their turn to figure out the right exit and try to move there. And then the board and the boogeyman will respond. I mean, it looks fun. And I was going to throw some shade at them for including this quote by the co-creator of the Stuff of Legends. Because, yeah, big deal, this guy likes his own game. But actually, this is the co-creator of the graphic novel and not the game. So pretty great to have the creator's seal of approval. I mean, I assume he was probably involved in the process along the way, and he's not going to trash his own IP because he's probably getting a kickback with having partial intellectual property rights to it anyway. But still, not as silly as I first thought. Now, there are no stretch goals that are exclusive, although there is going to be a deluxe version which has miniatures and game trays as well, which I'm sure won't be widely distributed if you were to get this at retail later. And you also get this metal coin, which apparently costs you $10. Okay. And shipping is pretty high. It's an extra $30 to get to Canada, so it's going to come to $120 for something that I would want to pay $60 to $70 for. So I'm inclined to wait until later, but from a gameplay perspective, short, easy to learn rulebook, and it looks like fun. At least if you like games with a trader mechanic that can change partway through the game. But I mean, you'd have to be an unfeeling monster if that was the case. But don't worry, there's still an opportunity for you to change your ways. Anyway, if you are interested, that's Thursday at 9:05 a.m. And if you're watching this Monday morning, you have 3 hours to figure out 8 riddles, all of which will get you entries into getting it for free. So I'm probably gonna do that. I don't know what the answers to the riddles are. If I find them, if I do it and I figure it out, I'll just also put the answers to the riddles in the comments. Yeah, because I won't spoil it for you, but also you'll only have 3 hours, so. We're getting off track. That is Thursday morning if you're interested in backing, but also go do that riddle thing that I will put in the description below. Now next up we have Vojvodina, which is a tile placement and card drafting game, and it looks simple enough. You'll have a map. You'll take turns either discarding a card to get one of your field tokens or playing a card face down, committing to that contract, and placing one of your field tokens on the modular map. There's 4 main map pieces that kind of link together to make a different map each time, and you're going to put your polyomino tile somewhere on the board where you can gather grain to fulfill those contracts at the end of the round. Because at the end of the round, for each space of the map you cover, you get 1 grain, and then you reveal these contracts, and if you have 5 grain, you get 10 coins, let's say, for fulfilling that contract. It's a person with the most money at the end of, I think, 4 rounds for 2 players and 2 rounds for 4 players wins. That was a lot. Pah! Just thrown at you. Now, it's $30 US, which might be a good deal to you. And you do get 2 computer versions of their previous games, Tibetan's War and Agent Walker's Secret Journey, which I guess is a play on Texas Walker Secret Agent. That's the show. I think that's the show. Texas Walker Lone Ranger. God, it's got to rhyme with feast. Texas Walker Fancy Feast. In any case, I haven't heard of either of those games, but hey, you get them. However, the number 1 reason you shouldn't get this are the coins. Oh my goodness. I don't know why this is still a thing. Why are there coins of different denominations that are the same shape and color? Terra Mystica does this, and it's almost enough to warrant burning every single copy of that game to the ground. Either different colors, or different sizes, or even better, both. Stop doing this. Please, any publishers that may be stumbling across this, if you have money in your game, don't do this. Ugh, it's the worst. Anyway, if you are interested, seems light and fun enough. That's 9:40 a.m. on Thursday morning. Now, next up, we have a game called Cranky Chinchillas, and unfortunately, I'm already really not that impressed with the game because they, of course, don't feature the OG chinchilla of this channel, Susan with a knife. I think that's her last name. All one word. Honestly, that's probably why they're cranky, because they know their pathetic little chinchilla lives will never compare to Susan's greatness. Although, Christian the chinchilla, yeah, okay, fine. You could give him a run for their money. He's halfway there on the Suzometer. Anyway, this one doesn't have a rulebook, which frustrates me, again, to no end, because you've sent it out to reviewers. If you want to distinguish yourself from other social deduction games, having played many social deduction games, I know I shouldn't believe you if you just say, hey, this is different from all of those other social deduction games out there. Or maybe this is the biggest deduction of them all. Deception of them all. Because I'm really torn on whether or not this will be a decent game or not. The bones of it look good, so it could be a good game, or it could be another take that mess that even Christian can't save. I really like that there are 4 roles, one on the good team, one on the bad team, one who just wants to watch the world burn and kill everyone, and one who has to kill a certain number of people in order to win. I like that there are these varying factions that are going on, but in essence, it reminds me of a almost more Take That version of Bang, which is already fairly Take That, with some chinchilla art slapped on it. I also like that you can potentially look at other people's roles and deduce, or maybe you see 2 different roles and you can figure out what they might be. I think this one strays a little too much on the edge of randomness for it to actually be that sort of solid, exciting social deduction game that I'm looking for, and I think this is more on the Take That side than the social side. And hey, you know what, Cranky Chinchillas, if you wanted me to feel differently about it, well, you should have given me a rule book. I always find that games that feel like it's not necessary to have a rule book available either aren't that well thought out yet, which is fine, that's what Kickstarters are for, helping with this sort of development, or they're so basic that they only need to provide the sketch to you and don't feel like a rulebook will give you anything else. Also fine, people go for that, but in this case, the sketch that I am given isn't one that I am excited about, and especially not as excited as I was to read their tagline, which talked about social deduction and murdering each other. Anyway, if you're interested, it's $25 Canadian, or there's a version which is $32 Canadian, and it just gives you a different box. So don't get that. Or do if you want to pay $7 for a shiny box. But hey, they're doing something right. They're on that Unstable Unicorns Exploding Kittens train, and they've raised over $100,000 Canadian. So good for you, chinchillas. Maybe we'll see a smile after all. Anyway, if you are interested, that is at 11 a.m. on Thursday. But like I said, I love social deduction games, and this one, it really didn't grab me. So you'll have to let me know what you think. Now, next up, we have Beware of Bears, or Bob the Bear. And you might have been like me and seen an advertisement on Facebook that said, now with the Parks expansion, bears! And thought, oh wow, I didn't know Parks was coming out with a new expansion, and then clicked on it and saw that it was nothing like Parks at all, and fell for their very clever marketing trap. I mean, I really, really want to know, and probably never will, if that was a sneaky marketing attempt to just get more clicks to try to bring people to your product. But then when you bring people who are expecting something different, how many of them are going to stay? Also would be interested in that statistic. Doesn't matter. Let's get to Bob the Bear, which describes itself as a card game for the bold and the brave, like Russian roulette, bear style, and that it plays from 7 to 120 years of age. Which, honestly, I guess it's nice that we can start to introduce 7-year-olds to the concept of Russian roulette, so they can at least be prepared for the ending of Deer Hunter. Spoiler alert. And 2, I'm very happy that they've specified that age limit to make sure that Jean-Louise Calment, who died at age 121, well, I think they really wanted to specify that in the last year of her life, if they saw her pull out Beware of Bears, they would run over to her and slap it out of her 121-year-old hands. Not for you! Anyway, that tangent aside, which might be more exciting than the game itself. You're going to have a hand of cards, and you basically have to play 8 paths in a row, leading from you to the exit of the forest before getting eaten by bears 3 times, because you have 3 lives. So of course you get eaten by a bear, and then they spit you up, and you're like, oh, a new lease on life! And that happens 3 times in this horror show of a forest that you've decided to enter without bear spray. Anyway, so first person out of the forest wins. I don't really see any Russian roulette references. You're going to have face-down forest cards in front of you, and you're at certain points going to flip them up and hope that you don't have bears there. So that's part of it, because if you're forced to flip it up and there's a bear, well, you get eaten and you lose a life. It feels, doesn't feel quite like Russian roulette bear style, although that is a catchy catchphrase. Just a simple card-laying competitive saboteur, maybe? Take that, meet Saboteur, minus the hidden rolls. So it's $20 US, which is an alright price. Honestly, I would expect this to be sitting around the $25 US price point, so I'm glad that it isn't. It seems a little basic for my tastes, but if you're interested, that is Thursday at 2 p.m. Now next up, we have Gods and Heroes. And this is just a 2-player head-to-head card game, which for $30, you get yourself 2 playable decks.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
You're going to try to make sure you destroy all the other players' temples, or make sure that they run out of cards before you do. But for $50, you get 4 playable decks, and for $70, you get 6 playable decks. I'm not trying to start any beef here. They've hit their funding goal. I think that's great for them, and great for the people who are excited about this game. The art honestly looks fantastic. The preview video is absolute nonsense, but the art looks good, so I don't have any beef with them personally, but as a good friend of mine once said,
I don't have beef, but I got goo!
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I just think that the genre is so inundated with these types of 2-player head-to-head games that you really need something special to stand out. And if you're going to be doing just basically the same thing that everybody else has been doing, albeit with really fun and exciting art, I just don't know why you think people should spend their $30 or $50 or $70 or higher dollars on your product when they can spend it on something else. I mean, $70 for 6 playable decks? I know you get different items and your selection gets much larger as you go up, but still, $70 US? That just seems an extraordinary price point to me, when in essence you're just giving yourself more cards to play the same game. Honestly, I think I'm about ready to need another air horn sound for 2-player head-to-head cards.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Oh yeah, I guess there's that one. But if you love the genre, have I mentioned the art is great? Maybe you'll want to check it out. I mean, I assume you could get the same hit from Hearthstone and it's free, but at the same time, please don't download and play Hearthstone, because I did, and I haven't stopped, and it's way too addicting, and it's insidious to try to convince you to spend more and more money to get more and more cards, as these sorts of games often are. But this, of course, has made me play it even harder because I'm the type of person who thinks they can beat the system. And yeah, I'm gonna just grind away and I will get all the cards and I can play whatever I want. And I have done so, but at what cost? It's not worth the price in here. I need to stop playing it completely so I can spend more time on this. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off track here, but I figured I might as well fill this segment with something since, well, the art's nice. That seems really harsh. I'm sorry, gods and heroes. Like, it seems fine. The gameplay does seem fine, but it seems like the same thing that I've seen countless time and time again. And so I don't know what's the standout mechanic. Just that people have more health, so it takes longer. Let's move on. If you're interested, that's Thursday at 10:51 p.m. Now, thankfully, next up we have a game called Critical Care, which it feels like I'm kind of in need of some critical care with the selection we've had so far this week. But also, that's a good thing. A week where I don't feel any strain on my wallet, I can't ask for anything more than that. And it's just you and me hanging out, having a laugh with our good friend the Punisher.
I haven't washed my hair in a week.
I don't know what he's going to say there, but I assume it was something to do with goo.
Oh, Punisher.
Yeah, or slime. Anyway, what more could we ask for, right? And if you could ask for more, as I'm sure a lot of you are probably asking for right now, well, maybe would it be a board game where you get to work together to cure and discharge patients from an intensive care unit? Because that's critical care, baby. Now, I know what you're all thinking when you hear the title or you stumble across this campaign page for a board game that takes place in a hospital. This must involve heavy knowledge of medical information, right? After all, how could we play a medical game without that knowledge, especially when the stakes are so high? Well, never fear. Don't worry, there is no medical knowledge required whatsoever. That's my favorite part of this campaign page. I just wonder who gave that note. I wonder who said, no, you know what? We really need to specify that anyone can play this board game and it's not just doctors. Because our audience, well, they're idiots and we should specify this. I mean, hey, they're not wrong because I'm the one who's looking at it right now. Anyway, you can get it for $39 US, so 50 bucks Canadian, and you can also, as an add-on, donate a copy to your local library or school for 29 bucks US, which is great. And as we've learned from previous campaigns, is never gonna happen, hardly at all. Now, and here we have another one with no rulebook. It has been a very frustrating week on that front, and this is not the sort of critical care that I need. So while I am annoyed that I had to spend more time parsing through various videos to try to compile a succinct explanation for all of you, it honestly seems pretty all right. Anyway, everybody starts with their own patient who will probably have some sort of incredibly serious injury like brain disease or liver failure and horrible ailments like that. And honestly, I can see why they said you don't need a medical degree because it is pretty entrenched in the theme. Now, each player gets 6 cards and you're going to use these cards to help your patient out or help the other patients because you're all working together. You need to make sure all the patients are cured. And you can use these cards to heal injuries, and each patient has a little track of all the various injuries that they can accrue over the course of the game and what they start with. And if you get too many injuries of one type, well, that's okay. Don't worry, that brain trauma that you just sustained when your inexperienced doctor was wheeling you around the corner in your gurney too quickly and you went flying into the corner of the wall, that's okay, because it turns out you've had too much brain trauma, so don't worry, it's just a blood disease now. You roll a dice and you see what other disease it turns into. Basically, it's just to represent your patients getting sicker and sicker and sicker and you having to fight against that tide. But what I like most about it is that this is a sort of educational board game that doesn't get bogged down by being educational and by being grounded in these sorts of medical facts. It's going to be fairly simple, right? You treat your patients with your therapy cards and you try to deal with the complication cards that get turned up. And each doctor might have a special ability as well. But what's kind of neat is that the complications that happen are only specific to a certain type of trauma. So diseases that affect the brain will obviously only affect patients that have current brain trauma. And it's that sort of detail that's awesome, and that sort of education that you learn about all these various types of ailments and whatever, that it doesn't feel like it's trying to teach you something. Because as soon as a board game says, hey, we're going to teach you something and be educational, that's when I walk out the door and play some Blood Rage. For $50 plus shipping, for me, honestly, that's still a pass for me. Too expensive for me to consider, but you might be interested. And if you are, that's Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Now, our next game, while set in Japan, is actually going to be manufactured in the good old US of A. And that's Daimyo Senso, a 1 to 8 pure strategy game. And so you'd expect this campaign to be booming, right? Because I know personally, I've seen so many people on Facebook raging against manufacturing being done overseas. Now we should just change it all and set up shop here, over here in America, because then we don't have to worry about those shipping containers. Which, like, hey, I'd love not to worry about it. So I know, I'm sure you can bet that this has hit thousands of backers because of the very vocal amount of people who say, yes, I back with my money and I support US-made products, and I will support them being made here. And so our current backer number is 20. It's 20. Or maybe it's gone up since I last checked. Maybe it's 21. Woo! I mean, 3 of whom are on the fence and haven't actually committed to a specific tier. So hey, all of you, we gotta produce in America people. This is your chance to take a stand, put your money where your mouth is, support Daimyo Senso. I don't care if you have any interest in the game at all. This is where you can show that it could work. I mean, honestly, the funding goal was so low. They've hit their funding goal, which is awesome. And I just assume that they are making these from somewhere like Game Crafters or someone that will produce individual components and individual prototypes. And my bet is that the shipping is just going to be one guy shipping them out of his house when he gets all the copies from the manufacturer. So be mindful of that, because depending where you are, it's going to just be sending it via the postal service, then however much they charge to get it to your door. Now, there's no rule book. This is the week, and the video isn't that helpful, but that shouldn't matter to you, right? America first! But going through it, it does remind me a bit of Small World in terms of all your stacks are kind of little stacks of things, and you're moving them around a map and trying to maintain control over the map and get various victory points. But what I do think is kind of a neat mechanic about this one is that depending on what clan you choose, your actions are predetermined for the year. You have a little clan, it'll say, hey, now you recruit, now you can attack, and now you can move, but you're going to do that in that order. So depending on what clans you're playing against, you have to figure out how to navigate your own clan's priorities, which that sort of deterministic, available thinking is kind of a neat twist, that you don't get to choose your actions. You've chosen your clan, and you just have to make the best with what your clan has decided to do at that time. It does look decent, and not just because it's set in Japan, which you know I'm personally a fan of. But for $70 US, I mean, you know where I stand on this. But I guess that's what happens. You got to pay a little bit more for it to be manufactured in the US. For those of you who want to support locally made stuff, now is your chance, or you never get to speak about it ever again. Anyway, if you're interested, that is Saturday at 1:13, I think it's PM. It might be AM. It's down there. Now, next up we have 18 Holes, which isn't about a groundhog finally reaching adulthood, but it is, in fact, a game about golf. And it actually looks like quite a lot of fun. There's a few expansions that this Kickstarter is specifically designed around, and a new roll and write, but since I'd never heard of it before, and I'm guessing you probably haven't either, I'm just going to focus on the base game in terms of telling you what it is. But be prepared to spend a lot here. I thought that this was going to be like some $20 card game, just judging by the art and the presentation, and it's certainly more than that. Now you're going to start by building the course with these hexagonal tiles, either preset or random, and then you're going to put the little flag tokens on each of the greens, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 18. You're going to play a whole round of golf. But you can only have 5 clubs. And so you draft these clubs at the beginning of the game. You take one, you pass it, and you pick. That's how drafting works. But the key is when you're playing, you can only pick up all of your clubs when you have played all 5. So you're going to have to time out, depending on the holes and depending on the holes that are to come, which clubs you're going to use, because naturally the driver will send your ball further than if you used a pitching wedge. So that's kind of a neat twist. And each club, when you choose to use it, you'll be able to draw a card from one of 5 shot decks. And basically this is just going to be the distance from chipping to trying to hit it as far as you can. And then you flip the card over and you see if you manage to hit it straight, if it veered off a bit into the rough, if you got a curve going, whatever. You're not quite sure what your shot is going to be. You have the general range and you just kind of hope for the best depending on those shot cards and how they're broken down. And the first person to reach the green takes that flag and gets the point. If multiple people reach the green at the same time and the same shot, then everybody gets that 1 point and you move on. The person with the most points at the end of 18 holes wins. And now I'm a golfer. I quite enjoy playing golf. I played golf as a kid, and now I usually just play infrequently when I go home, but I like golf, and I was ready to write this game off as another crappy golf game where you flip over cards and whatever. But I think that there are some really fun mechanics in here. I think that drafting of clubs, what happens if you get just a whole bunch of clubs that are long distance? Are you ever going to be able to get it onto the green? I kind of like the shot deck too, because you know the general area where your shot will go and how far it'll travel, but it might veer to the left or the right, which, hey, certainly replicates my golf experience, which never goes in the fairway. Now the expansions add putting onto the green, so it depends where you land on the green, and then there's one more putt to see if you make the putt or not, because depending where you are on the green, there's going to be a more difficult putt. And there's also a wind expansion, which adds wind that you can use to curve your ball around. There's going to be some tiles which give a coastline, so you don't want to hit the ball into the water. Lots of fun stuff here, but the price point is a huge, huge bar. Just for the base game, it's $124 Canadian, and that's disappointing to me, because if this was something that was $60 or $70, it would be really vying for my personal pick of the week, because I think it looks cool. But at that price point, it just doesn't offer the depth of strategy that I want when I spend that much money. But if price is no barrier, this one looks fun. It looks pretty replayable because, of course, changes every time. And that's Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Now, next up, we have Jungle Dash, which is described as a push your luck race through the Amazon inspired by real life events. And I know what you're thinking, that this is probably designed by the one, the only, the Chucky the Cheese joke man himself, Benjamin Coach Wade, who first appeared in Survivor Season 18 Tocantins, or as I like to refer to it, Survivor Cochin Jeans. Now, for those of you who don't watch Survivor, well, what are you waiting for? It is the best game in existence. And for those of you who do watch Survivor, hey Thinker Themer, I'm sure you got the reference of Coach's alleged harrowing escape from being eaten alive in the Amazon. What a friggin' star. Anyway, let's get back to the game, which if you don't look at it through the lens of Coach, well, it's going to be a huge disappointment. But if you do, you race your little Coach meeple through the jungle, through 8 layers of cards, and the first person who makes it to the canoe gets to paddle away and leave all the other coaches to meet their fate. It's pretty simple. If you're adjacent to a card, an unexplored jungle, you can flip it over, but the person who is in last place gets to choose what orientation the card goes in, so they can potentially put hazardous traps in your path. Basically, they'll just give you the worst option. And on your turn, you roll 5 dice, hoping to roll feet. But you can re-roll any blank dice. You can re-roll the blank dice as much as you want, as long as you continue to get at least 1 foot every time. If you roll the dice and they're still blank, then you lose all of the feet that you've accumulated, and you can't use any of those feet to move your little coach through the jungle as he so desperately wants to move. You also have to physically chop off one of your own feet in real life. I describe this game as Russian roulette foot style. It's an intense game. Now it's $29 Canadian, and there's free local pickup if you live in southern BC, so love that. I always love local pickup. There should always be local pickup for somewhere. And then that encourages all those people who are local, who are your neighbors, to support your project and bring it to life. Anyway, it looks fun and light. If you know somebody who likes push your luck games, or loves push your luck games, and loves Can't Stop, for example, this reminds me along that similar vein. Anyway, if you're interested in that, that is Sunday at 6 p.m. And finally, Our last game this week is Fractal. And if you've watched my 5 Reasons You Shouldn't Back Voidfall video, you might remember us talking briefly about Fractal. And honestly, if you're looking in terms of a 4X experience, I really think Fractal is the way to go. The promise that it offers, I think, is really significant. 30 minutes a player, which is hard to do in 4X. Now, the basic structure of the game is there's going to be these 4 cycles. So rounds, we're just going to call them rounds. And on your turn, you get to take 2 actions. Then the next person goes. Now you have to pass when you've played all of your action cards, but there are a number of actions that you can take, like recruiting, colonizing a planet, advancing your troops across the galaxy. Depending on your stats, you can only move a certain number of ships. It's kind of like Lords of Hellas, similar movement. Researching new tech, there's a bunch of stuff you can do. But once that is all done and everybody's all passed, then you resolve any conflicts on the board that will trigger, which is pretty much 2 people in a space that someone owns. This is very similar to Rising Sun in terms of you have an action phase leading up to this conflict war phase, which, hey, that's already a good point for you, Fractal. Now, conflicts happen in spaces that you don't own that you're invading, or vice versa. And basically you win if you kill all the other ships dead, or force them to retreat, killing their morale dead in the process. That's just flavor. There's no morale track. But I like the battle system because you play a card face down, flip them up, resolve it, and then keep on playing cards until one person wins the battle. But these are the same tactic cards that everyone has access to, unless you have a specific ship that gives you an additional tactic card that you're allowed to use for that battle, because your ship can do different things, obviously. And I like that because you have the same tactic cards, you have that chance to bluff your opponents. I mean, there's a lot to like here. And you get a nice storage system as well, which I always love to highlight, but it is expensive. The base game clocks in at $114 Canadian. If you add in the legacy campaign aspect to it, that's $174 Canadian. If you want to have a solo mode with it, that's an additional 29 euros. That puts you over $200 Canadian. And if you are considering it, just get the base game. Just do it. That's all you need. You can get the other stuff on their web store if you find out later down the line that you love it and you want to go down this campaign. They're still selling stuff from their first Kickstarter on their web store, so you will have an opportunity to get those later, I'm assuming. And honestly, the Automa just doesn't seem worth it, because I think the whole draw of this game is that it is short and it is accessible to get people to play with you, so you don't need to always rely on that solo variant. And you can't even use the solo in the campaign mode anyway, so don't worry about it. In terms of exclusive stretch goals that you might miss out on later, for the campaign and the Automa, there's really nothing, I don't think. There's a playmat or something, who cares? And there aren't too many other stretch goals that are exclusive that you're not going to have access to. One being a bunch of acrylic tokens, which, sure, that'll be nice, but again, you don't need it. But you get that with the base game. So there's nothing in this that makes me think, or is preying on your FOMO, to make you get more than you should right now. And so if you are interested, that is next Tuesday, the 26th at 10 a.m. And that's it. That's it for the week. We made it. We made it through. This was a weird one. Now, every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. Pick for me, pick for you. The pick for me being something that I am particularly drawn to. You know, some days the little guy wins. David beats Goliath. A small game will topple a giant. Unfortunately, I think I must be in league with the boogeyman this week, because that's not happening, and I'm going for the stuff of legends. That's my personal pick of the week. I just think it looks good. And it's really based solely on that social deduction aspect and those hidden teams. And sure, even the switching allegiances can be fun. More than anything, it's just such a vibe, you know? It gives that really nice sense of atmosphere, at least the campaign does. And I think it's going to be a fun little quick puzzle. I think the theme is really cool. I love the toys that you can be. You know, I love my toys. Yeah, I just think that I think it looks great. I think it is for a very specific audience. I think if you don't like social deduction, I think if you don't like cooperative, I think if you don't like trader mechanics, it's definitely not for you. But from what I've read, it seems really accessible and also seems like it would be a good time. Again, I'm not backing it because it is way too expensive for it to get to me, and I'll just pick it up later when somebody's done with it, as I've done with the majority of my collection. But yeah, I think that one looks good. As for the pick for you, I gotta give it to Fractal. I'm sure you saw both of these coming, but Fractal, it really does look good. And I am particularly excited that my neighbor has already told me he's getting Fractal, so I don't have to worry about getting it myself, which makes it even better. I don't think I would pick this one up myself. I'm not huge on space themes personally, and I like 4X fine, but they don't really suck me in terms of theme as something like a fantasy genre would. But I think there's a lot about Fractal that looks really slick. It looks really streamlined, and I think it will get to the table more than those other sprawling 4X experiences. And if you're able to get it to the table, that is valuable for these types of experiences. I think the combat looks fun. I think I like that the base pledge gets you all those little ship minis. You don't have to pay deluxe to get those extra ship minis, like some other campaigns. Yeah, I think the Fractal main just base pledge looks pretty cool. So if money is no object, and this is the week where you're thinking, well, I'm going to treat myself and get a cool game, well, get what you want, really. But I think Fractal does look solid mechanically from that sort of strategy standpoint while not being too overwhelming. And yeah, I think it looks good. That's enough about Fractal. And finally, we've got a bonus shout out here. I saw this post. I'm part of a board game reviewers and media group on Facebook where publishers can go and contact reviewers and whatever. But Ludo Cherry just launched their web store. Now, I was unfamiliar with Ludo Cherry, and I looked at their stuff, and their clothing, which is great, board game related clothing, but it's a sort of elevated, fancy, subtle board game clothing than just the usual graphic t-shirt with a meeple on it. These patterns are really cool, and they've got some shirts up there, and they've got some skirts up there. I think that's all they have up there right now. I think they had a pin and some face masks as well. But yeah, their stuff and their patterns look really neat. And they had a successful Kickstarter a while ago and have now opened this web store. If you're interested in getting yourself some kind of fashionable outfits with a slight little wink to board gaming, this does look really neat. It's a little pricey, but everything is ethically sourced and sustainable, which personally I like seeing that, especially in clothing companies, because I feel like with the textile industry, there's lots of turnover, whatever. Their stuff looks cool. It's like $82 for like a short sleeve button-up shirt. I think it's more expensive for the skirts, but the patterns look cool. My girlfriend in particular, who's very fashion oriented or hates all of my graphic t-shirts, I should say, she liked them as well. So if you're looking for something that's a little more fashionable and subtle and a little bit upper scale, yeah, check them out. I'm definitely going to be checking them out. And I swear I'm not just making this shout out so that they eventually send me a free shirt that I can wear on camera. But if they did, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And if they didn't, I'll probably get one of them from my girlfriend for Christmas because she thought they looked good and I thought they looked good, and it's kind of neat. So that's a tangential shout out. Isn't a Kickstarter, it's not ending, but they just launched their web store, so I think that might interest some of you. And one more thing, finally, on a personal note, we hit 2,000 subscribers yesterday morning. Well, it's today when I'm filming this. I've been a bit behind on my filming schedule. Some other work has kept me away from all of you. I just want to continue to express my gratitude to all of you who are still watching. And for those of you who aren't still watching, well, now it's great. I can finally share my true feelings about those garbage people with no repercussions because they're not going to see this. And if you're seeing this, well, you're not one of the garbage people. You're one of the good ones. Officially, you're a good person. Just in everything. Yeah. I know, I have that power. But seriously, thank you so much, all of you, for your continued support, your continued comments. Getting to 2K in a little over 5 months is kind of exactly the pace that I had hoped for and have been striving towards. And I have faith that we are going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to try to elevate the stuff that I bring to the channel, continue to grow, put more stuff out there while keeping it at the same level of quality. But yeah, this is really, really cool. I am really, really thankful for all of you. It perhaps doesn't come across in this video format, or I know I often reply when people say like, hey, I like your videos. I say, oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And I say that a lot. I feel myself repeating that a lot, but it's true. I really do appreciate it. And I am very grateful for all of you, your continued support, commenting, you know it all. I'm gonna stop getting sappy here, but it means a lot. And I am looking forward to moving on up, getting more and more prototypes and games that I could preview for you, still help fight the FOMO, always give you my honest opinions, and always give you a balanced approach of looking at it to make sure you don't back it unless you know you're gonna like it. Anyway, that's a bit of a ramble. I'm gonna finish it up.
I can't believe people keep tuning in to watch you,
hey,
wise guy.
Pablo, thank you. Yeah, I can't believe it either.
Hey, you's on the other side of the screen. Yeah, stop watching them. If you want some real content, why don't you tune in to Pablo's
Well, I mean, that's great. I didn't know that you were transitioning in this sort of...
Yeah, that's right. It's better than this wise guy flapping his gums around, blah, blah, blah. I'm a funny man. Forget about it.
Anyway,
I'm telling you, if you want yourself a real channel,
anyway, I better wrap this up.
That's the way to go. So I'll tell you where to go.
Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you're backing, what you're thinking of backing, what might be coming up down the line.
/C/ /backslash.
I don't know why he is moving so much. It's going to give me so much work to do in post.
Uppercase 3.
Anyway, my name's Chris George.
2.
I don't have a catchphrase, but
Z.
But hey, go check out
Q.
Pablo's Pickles.
So that's what it is. That's how you do it.
It's not a real channel.
That's how you get to my channel.
He doesn't have thumbs.
And if anybody says it's different, I'm gonna
gotta go. Bye.
Little life. Yeah, that's right. Get out of here. It's me. I'm back in the end of the credits. Pablo's never going away. Thanks for watching.